Hi there. My name is Ryan McMahon, and this is my reflection on literacy and numeracy. Now, throughout this unit, it's been emphasized that pre-service teachers need to understand the importance of literacy and numeracy. And one thing I was not aware of when I started this unit was that literacy and numeracy, they're explicitly defined skills in the Australian curriculum. And as educators, we're expected to develop these skills in any learning area. And because of how important literacy and numeracy are, pre-service teachers sit the land type test. And this ensures that our literacy and numeracy skills are in the top 30% of the country. And in schools, students in years 3, 5, 7, and 9, they sit the NAPLAN test, but a disadvantage to this is that it's only conducted once a year. And I've learnt from this unit is that assessing students' literacy and numeracy is a consistent, ongoing thing. And looking at my test performance on a literacy and numeracy test I just sat, I scored 260 out of 320 points, which is roughly 81%. And this was actually better than I had anticipated. And I finished this test in about 45 minutes out of a given hour. So I think I spent a fair amount of time analyzing the questions. When I look at the questions I got wrong, I noticed the majority of them were literacy based. That's not too surprising, but when I was doing the test, what surprised me was that some of the numeracy questions, they were heavily word based, and that really caught me off guard. And I could see where literacy and numeracy were overlapping, and you need both of these skills to complete questions like this. And when I consider my performance, it's evident that I'm stronger in numeracy than I am in certain aspects of literacy. And this is not surprising to me because numeracy has always been a strength of mine. And these results actually mirror that of my Landtight test, where my numeracy scores were 3 to 4 bands higher than the average, and my literacy scores were only 1 to 2 bands higher than the average. So when I reflect back and consider my strengths, questions that were centered on percentage and time, I actually found those really enjoyable. It took me a while to do it by hand because I am used to using technology to solve mathematical questions these days, but it was refreshing to know I can still do it by hand. Spelling questions, grammar and punctuation based questions. I also had a lot of fun with these questions. There are 3 areas of literacy I am comfortable with, and it's going to be useful for me when I'm assessing my students to pick up on their spelling, grammar, and punctuation and not just give them full marks if the content knowledge is correct, but the literacy skills aren't up to date. And also picking the relevant information from a large block of text was also a critical skill I employed here, and it was a strength of mine as I was able to do this on multiple questions. Looking at my weaknesses, one of them was when I came across a word I wasn't familiar with, I tended to panic a lot, and this caused me to just end up guessing. So that's something I need to work on. I need to work on my composure. And another thing was I was overthinking. When I read questions and I got the answer instantly, I thought it was too simple. So I went back and I overthought and I actually changed my answer. And then when I looked at the actual answers, it was a shame to see that I had it right the first time. So having completed this test, it implies to me that I do have the necessary literacy and numeracy skills to be an educator, and that I am capable of developing students' literacy and numeracy skills. What it also implies is that I need to trust myself and not overthink, because overthinking is just going to hurt me if I continue to do this. And what I've learned from this unit is not every student's literacy and numeracy is going to be at the expected level. And as an educator, it's critical for me to do what I can to bring students back up to speed. It's also a standard that I must abide by in the EITSL standards 2.5, literacy and numeracy strategies. And a key psychological concept I've utilized is operative knowledge, which basically means using what you've learnt and applying it. I use this on the test, and students need to learn to use this as well. And a key thing is it has to be taught by educators, and it's crucially based on the language used, and our communication is what forms the structure of our higher order thinking and our complex mental processes. So when I consider what this implies for literacy and numeracy in my method areas, both my subjects, psychology and digital technologies, they use a lot of subject-specific terminology. And I've repeatedly seen that just because I understand terminology, I can't assume my students do. So I need to work a way to build students' understanding towards this. When I look at psychology, it's more literacy based, but that doesn't mean numeracy is absent from it when we look at theories and studies. So it's similar to question 26 on the test. In psychology, I really enjoy discussions in psychology because it's so theoretically packed. And I want students to develop their own perspectives and their own ideas. Simply learning definitions is not good enough. I want them to be able to critically analyze things, and I want them to question things. I want them to consider information from a variety of sources, weigh them up, and use critical thinking to come to their own conclusions. And I want them to see the relevance this critical thinking has to the real world. And of course, this is not possible if they have underdeveloped literacy and numeracy skills. When I consider digital technologies, it's more balanced in terms of literacy and numeracy, similar to question 20 on the test with a worded paragraph followed by a diagram representing numerical figures. And in digital technologies, an aspect I want to see is I want students to be able to create things. And of course, this requires students to understand what the question is asking of them. So they need to be able to break down key bits of information. So knowing the definitions is only 1/3 of the equation. Knowing what something means doesn't mean you know how to apply it. And you need to see real world application to what you know. And I want students to analyze their work. I want them to consider, have they developed their solutions to the best of their ability? Is there things that they could do better next time? Is there something they overlooked? And of course, again, this can't happen if they have underdeveloped literacy and numeracy skills. Now, some strategies I've learnt throughout this unit to develop literacy and numeracy, first off, is using terminology interchangeably. As I mentioned before, operative knowledge is crucially based on language. So using terms interchangeably helps students go from not understanding it to being comfortable using it when explaining things. And another technique I've learned is questioning. As educators, it's important we know our students, so we need to specifically know what the students know and what they don't know, and we also need to understand how confident they are in applying their knowledge. And then there's also, we might be required to modify their tasks and assessment tasks, and this is required for students with lower literacy and numeracy skills because we can assist them in achieving the desired learning outcomes. I've seen the benefits to utilizing all these strategies on my placement with using terms interchangeably. I've seen students go from being confused to being confident in terms. My questioning helped me plan my lessons and my tasks better as I was getting quick feedback from students. And I did modify tasks that were better suited to students, and I saw how beneficial this was for their learning. So in summary, reflecting on my test, I am happy with my result, and because of this unit, I think I'm much more confident in my ability to develop students' literacy and numeracy skills. And I'm also better at identifying where literacy and numeracy is and can be embedded in my discipline areas and other discipline areas. It's clear that I still have a lot to learn, which is one of the great things about teaching. It's a constant learning experience. And having taken this unit, I believe I'm one step closer to preparing students to be successful in the 21st century. Thank you.